our routine. And part of that routine is to start with these meditations from the Valley of Vision. So this morning we had one that I haven't looked at yet, so it's titled The Gift of Gifts. So if someone would like to read that, we can open the floor for discussion for a few moments.
Okay, O source of all good, what shall I render to thee for the gift of gifts? Thine own dear Son, begotten, not created, by Redeemer, proxy, surety, substitute, his self-emptying, incomprehensible, his infinity of love beyond the heart's grasp. Oh, that's a long. Herein is wonder of wonders. He came below to raise me above, was born like me that I might become like him. Herein is love. When I cannot rise to him, he draws near on wings of grace to raise me to himself. Herein is power. When deity and humanity were infinity apart, he united them in insoluble unity, the uncreated and the created. Herein is wisdom. When I was undone, with no will to return to him and no intellect to devise his recovery, he came, God incarnate, to save me to the uttermost, as man to die my death, to shed satisfying blood on my behalf, to work out a perfect righteousness for me. O God, take me in spirit to the watchful shepherds and enlarge my mind. Let me hear good tidings of great joy, and hearing, believe, rejoice, praise, adore, my conscience bathed in an oath of repose, my eyes unlifted to a reconciled Father, uplifted to a reconciled Father. Place me with ox, ass, camel, goat, to look with them upon my Redeemer's face, and in him account myself delivered from sin. Let me with Simeon clasp the newborn child to my heart, embrace him with undying faith, exulting that he is mine and I am his. In him thou hast given me so much that heaven can give no more.
That's quite a prayer.
And it's appropriate for the season.
Oh, I'm sure that's, yeah.
Simeon is the one that says, I won't die until I get to see Christ, right? If the last one there, remember, he says, he actually picked, okay, I thought,
Okay.
go on.
Yeah, I mean, the scripture says, then we shall see him face to face. So when we step across that threshold into eternity, we will see the Lord face to face. Something great to look forward to. Any other thoughts? Interspersed throughout this is a whole systematic theology. So these prayers are more than just emotional things, which is a lot of emotion in them, but it also has quite a bit of theology in there.
You know, whoever wrote this new doctrine.
The what?
Whoever wrote this new doctrine.
Oh, these, the Puritans, yeah, they probably did a lot of Bible study, those guys, they were good.
It is chock full of good stuff.
Never would thought, we always think of love and power, but and God's method to save us, I never thought of it as being wisdom. Yeah, herein is wisdom. When I was undone and no intellect to devise recovery, he came, God incarnate, to save me to the uttermost. That it would take wisdom to be able to plan all this and implement it.
As Paul say, it was a great mystery that was hidden for ages and generations, but is now revealed. By the wisdom of God.
But I don't think that, as generally speaking, that we understand that he saved us to the uttermost. I think we all think we're pretty good people.
What?
I don't know that I understand that.
Oh, it says here, he came, God incarnate, to save me to the uttermost. And he does save us to the uttermost, but I still think we have that little spark in us that we're good.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, I am much better than the man that just shot the executive of.
Only because God has restrained the evil.
Yeah.
I know, but I don't think we are.
So you don't think we're
speaking.
utterly corrupt? You think there's a little bit of
No, I think that's what I think. generally speaking. That's what we think.
Oh,
That's
okay,
what
okay.
we think of ourselves,
Right.
whereas we are not.
The truth is, okay, I just read a thing by Sproul, okay, I just reread a book on Reformed theology. Sproul says he doesn't like the term total depravity.
Mhm.
Because that's not really a good term. It means utter depravity. Total depravity doesn't mean there's no good in us. Joan and I watched a special on about this Indian gentleman started a school, Shante Bhavin, for girls of the uttermost lowest class, and he took them and educated them, fed them. He did a good thing, or he did a thing. What does Sproul say? It wasn't a good thing, but it was a thing that was I forgot. Morally, it was a good. Help those girls out. Doesn't mean they're all totally depraved.
No.
He likes the term utterly. We're not utterly depraved, we're total depraved. He doesn't like utter depravity. There's we do good things.
When you look at that, if we were all totally depraved, we'd be all dead, we'd be shooting each other to the other. Like you say, it's affected everything in
But
us.
it's just that he can't handle any sin at all. He's holy. So even if it were just a little speck.
Yeah.
You know, as compared to an entire black heart, like the man who shot the United Healthcare guy, like she's saying,
Sure,
he can't handle the speck. He's too holy.
exactly.
I
So that's
think,
the way you kind of have to look at it.
yeah, but I think we kind of live with that mentality.
Oh, in general, I
Yeah,
think
in
people think,
general,
Yeah.
and humanism, okay?
Yeah.
Mankind is the ultimate good.
Mhm.
No, it's
You know why we think that's because we're in the dark. It's just like if going into a room, you don't notice how dusty it is until you turn on a bright light.
Right.
Or how dirty the floors might be. And if it's low light or something like that, it looks fine.
That's
It's
right.
because we're not in complete light.
It's a collision of two worldviews is what we're talking about. The biblical worldview, we're in doubt, we need someone to reach down and save us, okay, we're lost. You know, and the other worldview, the humanistic worldview says, yeah, bad stuff happens, but we're still evolving to become ultimately. And good point, though.
We've had billions of years to evolve. Yeah, how come we're still the same way they were?
Because the Bible is 100% true. It started in the Garden of Eden and we fell completely, totally.
And it keeps getting.
Well, you think the first set of people were washed away in the flood, and then you left with the best family on earth. So we come from the best of the best that was on that boat.
That's true.
But after that time, it's gotten worse, just like it got worse from Adam to Noah, it's gotten worse, except for the fact that at post-resurrection,
Mhm.
I think there is a covering of grace. I think just even having the 10 Commandments in a school, even if you're not elect, somehow that pulls you up and makes you better. You know what I'm saying?
There are unsaved people who do noble works,
Yeah.
okay? But even though the flood came, unless I'm wrong, Noah still carried the original sin through the seed
Well,
of
he was
Adam.
drunk after that.
You know, the problem with us is, like it says, back, sin is knocking at the door, its desire is for you.
Sure.
We all of us open that door just a little bit.
Yeah, I can't even see it on my
Right.
ring thing.
Yeah,
I
well,
can't even
well,
see
yeah.
out there.
And that's our problem, see.
Well, you look at all exposure of sin in the year 2024, it's exposure year.
Yeah.
Steve Lawson, Tim Hollow, Daystar, all of this stuff, it's like incredible exposure. But that's because I think God is trying to restore us and get us ready for something, you know, he's trying to clean us up. But,
I know. That was a big thing for me when I first come here and I started going through all the reform stuff and that. And I realized that I can't sit there and go, I think I'll choose Jesus today. I'm not capable of doing
no.
that. That kind of changed my mind. It was his fault. All right. And one day he stood up here and said, well, we're regenerated before we're saved. And I said to John, this guy's crazy. And then I got home and I started pulling his notes of my Bible out. And I spent a couple of weeks going through the Bible and I realized that's right.
Yeah, exactly.
So, you learn. So anything else? We're getting long.
You opened a can of worms there, Lynn.
All right, let's close in prayer and ask God's blessing on lesson this morning on Philippians. Father, we're back to our class again. We're back to these really, really good meditations, Lord. I thank you for them. I thank you for putting in the hearts of these Puritan people. They do generate a lot of good discussion. So I thank you for that. I lift the class to you today, Father, as we continue on in Philippians. We just pray that, Father, that you would open our minds and our hearts, that what we would receive would grow fruit in our life. And I thank you for Dennis, Father. I know he's done preparation for this. I ask your blessing on him and bless this, all of this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Does anybody have a prayer request that they would like the prayer warriors to pray?
Oh, yes.
Did we would like to what? Pray?
The prayer warrior.
My
Oh.
friend Cheryl Bartimus, she just lost her husband suddenly to a heart attack the day before yesterday. Cheryl Bartimus.
Joan had a full body MRI yesterday. And she's a little apprehensive, not about the test, but they're looking to find cancer somewhere. So we hope that MRIs are, I don't like MRIs, because if you feel great and have an MRI, they'll find something. Nothing can hide from an MRI.
They found my bladder problem.
Yeah.
They're looking at my back.
And then keep Jessica in your prayer, Jessica McDonald, who's undergoing testing. And then Jessica McDonald, and then also one more, sorry, a lady I worked with in Concord. Well, her son, 6 years old, California, has type 1 diabetes, but all of a sudden,
Wait, let's talk too fast.
okay, my son Sandra, my son, sorry, a coworker, former coworker Sandra, son Tristan, 26 years old. He's type 1 diabetic, but now all of a sudden he's just gone downhill. His kidneys, pancreas, and heart are shutting down. So,
Oh,
and then she's a strong believer. In fact, she came here from the West Coast to go to a Bible college, and very strong believer. They do street evangelism in Las Vegas. I mean, they're really on fire, and they've had people praying over him, but he's shutting down.
okay. What about Jessica?
Testing, other
Okay.
testing,
All right, well, we're back.
You're working without a net today, brother.
Or lock.
I'll be back.
Because what's wrong?
Yeah, so we're continuing now with Philippians, getting back into it, and we have, I'm not sure how many more lessons in this. Way too many for me, but that's all right. We will get through it, but
did we have a handout? I'm sorry, I've already forgotten where
No.
we were.
no,
Okay.
I think we were somewhere in chapter 2.
No, we're,
And,
yeah,
where
we're
the crisis came.
we're gonna look at Philippians 2:14 and 18 today, through 18. And so in fact, let's just read it together. Do all things without complaining and disputing, that you may become blameless and harmless children of God, without fault, in the midst of crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world, holding fast the word of life, so that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain or labored in vain. Yes, and if I be poured out as a drink offering on the sacrifice and service of your faith, I am glad and rejoice with you all. For the same reason, you also be glad and rejoice with me.
Wow. I'm glad I don't have to diagram these sentences.
This is almost like the sentence in the meditation.
Remember, Dennis, verse 14 was our theme verse for the mission trip we took down to Miami.
Yes,
Do all things without murmuring and complaining.
yes.
We
yes.
quoted that verse probably 60 or 70.
Yeah, yeah, and it was almost an hourly thing. Because mission trips really open the door for murmuring and complaining.
Yeah.
Particularly, especially if you're going somewhere that, has been devastated and you're going there to do work. And you are like the first mission trip I took kids on from when I came down here. We went to Miami after Andrew, and we stayed in a retreat center that was condemned. And there was a sign on the place that the building we stayed in, it said, "This is unsafe." And if you've ever watched MASH, ever watched MASH?
I forget.
Okay, the swamp looked better than the places we stayed in. I mean, it was like, it was just a frame with plastic tarps that really held the heat in.
Well, I confess that I murmured last June after me and someone else shoveled a whole trailer full of mulch out. And then 2 hours later, Wayne pulls up with another half-ton of mulch in his trailer and I go, whoa, thanks, Wayne. The Lord said, get the shovel and
Lord
shovel.
has a way
Okay.
of telling you that you don't have anything to complain about, like the two prayer requests, it's like, holy
Yeah.
cow.
What ideas are expressed by the Greek word for grumbling? The Greek word for grumbling.
I have to ask Pastor what
I
that is.
don't have my great text.
You don't have it. Well,
This is Philippians 2:14.
Siri, what's the?
it has to do, with murmuring under, a lot of grumbling has to do with almost doing it yourself, and then maybe sharing it with somebody underneath it all. It's grumbling, it's not something that you're necessarily bringing to the forefront to be dealt with, but you're grumbling, almost under your breath kind of thing, you're just kind of taking somebody aside and saying, hey, you know what? Kind of thing. And what's some of the ideas that are expressed by that? When we think about that, what are some ideas about grumbling?
This translation says complaining or arguing.
Yes, yeah.
So there's
Well,
always-
if
there's some kind
you
of
don't
conflict.
grumble, verses 15,
Yeah.
16, and 17 is no good. You're not making it's what it
Right,
says.
well, we'll get to that, Bob. Don't jump ahead here.
Just stop grumbling, Bob, right?
You undermine the attitude of the whole project.
Yes, you
Yeah,
can.
yeah.
You can. We went backwards, but, and without complaining and disputing.
Yeah, one is murmuring is under your breath.
Okay.
Yes,
The second one is where you're arguing with somebody.
yeah,
else.
arguing.
So the grumbling to me can show.
Steve, I can't read that in Greek. You can.
Oh, I got it.
Oh, you got it? Oh, of course.
The whole grumbling thing to me shows ingratitude, it shows you're not thankful.
Yes, yeah.
And it shows a lack of humility, so that's not really Christ-likeness.
Right.
People, that will make people question, is this real or not?
Right. So,
Some ghostlos.
so grumbling would be, coming to you and saying, did you know what happened? And, and you're just, it's almost, it's like gossip, but I think it's worse than gossip because of what you said, Lynn, it undermines, but it's not public. Now, disputing, on the other hand, is when you are in an argument. And, rather than, it's like when somebody makes a complaint, I always feel that if I'm gonna complain about something, I should have some type of a solution to it. I should be thinking through it, not just coming and saying, well, this is a problem. I'm looking for an answer to that. And I think that's what we need to be thinking when if we go to somebody and we're complaining, we should be able to go and say, look, I need help with this. I need help with dealing with
Well, I
this.
have a question for you. How about disputing? Is disputing always wrong? If we have disputation on something, is it a sin? Is it wrong?
I think the attitude that you bring to it is where the sin enters in.
Okay.
If it's an argument that has no, and again, it's a situation where there's no resolution.
Okay.
And, you can always tell if you're, let's just say you're disputing with someone and it's going well. I mean, it's a good
Right.
back and forth. When one of the parties winds up running out of information to share, it starts to become a polemic where you
Right.
start attacking the person rather than dealing with the issue. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. So a disputation in and of itself is not really a sin or something bad. I like the idea, it's your motivation.
Yeah.
Okay.
What about the dispute between, is it Barnabas, Paul and Barnabas, who was,
Yeah.
they had a.
Over Mark.
That, I would like to see that would probably not, well, we're not supposed to, but that was a hollering match, I bet,
Yeah.
really, because this is the way I want to do it, I don't want to take this guy, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And he's probably, he's seeing back here and saying, I shouldn't have done.
So I got a better one for you while you're on it. How about Paul and Peter?
Oh, yeah,
Galatians.
you went right to your face, look, buddy, you're doing this in front of, oh, yeah, that must have been.
So was Paul wrong?
No,
I mean, Paul was right because he was exercising his authority, but he had a good reason for the dispute.
Yeah, and we are to respect leadership and authority,
Yes.
but if there's a project being done and the leadership is using faulty materials and you know about it, do you let them build the building with the faulty material or whatever, the architectural problems and stuff? Or do you confront them, or do you respect their leadership? See, it gets pretty
Well,
sticky sometimes.
again, if leadership is not doing the right thing, then it's the role of the people under the leadership to call them into question. You know, and that's,
Philippians.
well, that was Paul and Peter,
Yeah.
he looked,
Yeah.
he's obvious what
Yeah.
he's doing, you're causing those other people to go meet with the Jews and say that, yeah.
yeah.
He's read.
What are some biblical then accounts of grumbling? Some other ones? Where do we find grumbling?
Wait,
Well, the
desert
Israelites-
Jews,
Israelites are
Oh,
full of it.
Yes, the Israelites grumbled all the time. God would do something good for them and almost immediately
Just
they were
think, remember
grumbling
the
about
football
something.
team may be the Jerusalem Grumblers.
Yeah.
That's what they
Yeah.
did.
Yeah.
They grumbled about no food, so God gave them manna, and then they grumbled about.
Yeah.
food.
Yeah.
It wasn't leeks and onions.
Yeah,
I think the Corinthians grumbled and 20,000 died in a day.
yeah,
I
yeah.
think it was crazy. In Corinthians, I think. I don't know if it's Corinthians.
Yeah, mentions that,
Yes.
chapter 10.
There's a saying, silence is golden, and sometimes I think that we go on, we have freedom of expression in under our constitution and freedom of speech, but silence sometimes is golden.
There was a song.
Yeah, it's like Four Seasons.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I
It's on the flip
do.
side of, I forgot.
When they had 45s.
Yeah, that's all I had for 45.
That wasn't again.
Chin June.
No, it was the Four Seasons.
Four Seasons.
That's right.
I still
It was on the flip side of,
Sherry.
I'm not gonna put you on a trivia.
Yeah,
question.
the text here does send us back to the Pentetateuch and the grumbling that the Israelites did. And, how did God respond to the grumbling of his people in the days of Moses?
Very well.
Not for the Israelites.
Harsh.
They were struck.
initially he had some grace for them,
Yeah,
but then it got to the point.
yeah, nor complain as some of them also complained and were destroyed by the destroyer. So, you know, you're complaining and grumbling and murmuring can have tragic results.
It's a learned gratitude and learned behavior. It seems so many scriptures, especially New Testament, are always tagged with and be thankful, and be thankful, and be thankful. That will change your attitude.
So do you think the Philippians were guilty of this? There was some little dissension in the church? That's why he wrote that?
He
Or
mentions that chapter 4 about two ladies that.
The two
were odds
ladies.
with each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there, and of course the words disputes, and I think that's where these ladies came in. They were disputing And we'll cover that a little bit more when we get to chapter 4.
Dennis, I've always wondered why in our PCA book of church order, we have a whole section on complaints. This is unbiblical. You
Yeah,
shouldn't complain.
That's right, that's right.
You should be able.
Yeah, what results from grumbling and disputes,
Divisions,
divisions?
and we have it in our country right now.
Bad.
Factions. These two ladies are dangerous because you could, I'm with this lady, I'm with that lady and murmuring.
Yeah.
You could tell,
Yeah.
it's like climbing a rock face. All they need to do is get a finger hold, and that's all that the enemy needs.
Yeah,
it's not a good
And we're all
look.
susceptible.
It's not a good look for the church. This causes people to make even more excuses about not attending, not coming.
well, I think it's deeper than that. It's much deeper than that. It's not about how people necessarily see the church. It's about people's relationship with God.
Yeah, for sure, but I'm not saying it's not, but I'm saying when we do have disputes in the church, the world is watching.
Yes, yeah, you're right.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
that should not be the motivation as to why we don't have dispute,
No,
why
I'm
we
just
should
saying
dispute.
that's one of the side
Yeah.
effects.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, they're laughing at Steve Lawson.
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
The world.
He's only one out of about a dozen
yeah.
right
it's-
now
yeah.
this year that have come out.
One of the things about it is too, maybe this is a good point. Most of these guys that are being exposed now had no accountability to anybody. Steve Lawson was not a member of that church. He was not a member of any body of other pastors. He was not, he just had absolutely no accountability. He's not a member of a church anywhere. And so there was no accountability, and there's still no accountability. I mean, he's just off on his own.
Yeah,
And like in the PCA, there's accountability, for everybody, not just pastors. There's accountability for all of us. And so and so that means that if we know of something that is and if we're disputing with somebody, we need to come to a solution with it.
yeah.
I've mentioned this before. I'd call it the Lentz rule. There was in our church back in Pittsburgh there, and it was actually before we even got to the church. They were thinking about what they needed to do to preserve the congregation if we left the United Presbyterian Church. And one of the problems was in the United Presbyterian Church, when you would leave, you could get your property, but you had to negotiate and pay for it, even though it was your property. And so the church decided that there was a house beside, and we were a landlocked church, okay? I mean, there was the church here and there was a building here. I mean, it was like boom, boom. And so they decided that this house was for sale and they would buy it, and they could use it for different things like the nursery and some Sunday school classes and things like that they could use it for. But ultimately, it was like, hey, if we wind up losing our church, we have some property still. And so when they were buying it and they were looking at it, a guy named Joe Lentz was totally and completely opposed to it. Completely opposed to it. And I'm not sure the reasons. I know that they were going to set up a nonprofit to buy it so that it was completely separate from the church itself. Joe was opposed to it. The church voted to buy the property, and Joe Lentz gave an interest-free loan to the church to pay for it. That's what I call the Lentz rule. He lost his position. He lost in the dispute, in the discussion, but he said, okay, I'm going with the people. I'm going with what the church decided. And that's what I call the Lentz rule.
Surety.
And that happened like 50 years ago. So, but Joe Lentz was he was a church father at Big Turn Church. I mean, he was one of the leaders, But that's what I call the let's rule.
Right.
All right. We're in the way there, but, let me see if I can move this out of the way here. Okay. Is grumbling and complaining a sin?
That was prophetic.
Well, that's what obviously is. Kind of been talking, antagonistic.
If it says do not do something, then you do it. To me, it's a sin if it's in the Bible.
I think the point you made is right, is the motivation.
Yes,
And
and,
that doesn't mean you can't disagree with something.
okay, so. Let me ask you a question. How many of you this week have complained about the cold?
Oh, me,
Every day.
Every day.
Is complaining a sin?
yes.
Oh,
I did it.
I didn't complain to God, I was just. I had to turn in my New York card and come down south, not cold.
Every day.
Well, you have to take that away, what do we have to complain about?
So if we complain about the weather, okay. Now, there are some times that a complaint is justified. When you know, if you have to make a complaint against a company. That can be justified, but to complain about something that is part of nature. God's glory is gonna be shown through everything. So if we can, and I know, the people in Western North Carolina right now are probably hard pressed not to complain. But, just like the Israelites, when they were complaining about the manna, that was a sin before God. And so, people are gonna recover from that. There were people that died. Many of them probably were believers. So when a believer dies, what happens?
He's in a better place.
It's a better place. So we need to be careful about it. This morning, as I was looking at something, I came up with this. Should be there. Where is it? Come on.
Complain about it, yeah.
No, I know you didn't complain because you're from Pittsburgh. People from Pittsburgh don't complain about the cold.
Only about things.
Yeah, we only complain about bad officiating. Why is my clicker is not working?
Complain about audio visuals.
I like to.
Yeah, oh, Dennis is great for complaining about the internet. Oh, Dennis, the internet.
All right,
How many people here on the way to church at one time in this year have complained about, I wish these people on these bicycles.
And I'm terrible because I call them the skinnies. I said they're showing the skinnies around again. Like, they're probably wonderful people.
Yeah.
I'm greatly afraid that many professing Christians do not realize what a gross sin it is to complain.
He was a Baptist, what is he?
Yeah. Oh, no.
Charles Spurgeon. And the thing about it is, I found that this morning, so just as we were getting ready, I was on my computer so I could put it into the presentation. And then I had problem getting to it.
To train your mind, like in Philippians 4:8, it says,
What do you get before 8?
You're complaining.
You're jumping ahead. We're doing the whole book. I had to deal with Bob on that.
Yeah.
Now I'm dealing with you. We'll get to it.
Good boy.
But you can complain, not necessarily mentally, but you can complain mentally. You don't have to,
No,
Verbalize it.
no, you can be complaining mentally and grumbling against God, muttering against God, complaining against God. God, why are you doing this to me? Tell me. Now, if you're honestly asking for God, but if it's a rhetorical question, God, why are you doing this to me? Then it's probably a sinful thing. If it's a rhetorical question, you're not really expecting him to answer.
Oh, no, David complained in the Psalms.
Well, no, I'm saying if it's just a rhetorical question, why are you doing this to me? Rather than, God, why are you doing this to me? What are you teaching me?
The answer is, right, that's
Yeah.
usually the answer. God says, I'm teaching you something.
Yeah. Yeah, what are you trying to teach me through this? And what effect will it have on an organization?
tears it apart.
It can tear it apart. And
And there,
yeah, and what is what is probably the way that Satan enters into things? It's through the grumbling, it's through undermining, it's through complaining.
Gossiping, leads to a lot of gossip.
Yeah, yeah, and that gives a chance for people to start taking sides. And when you start taking sides, the only side that you should be taking is what?
Who is on the Lord's side?
Who is on the Lord's
There are
side?
times when it's, I mean, in our church in New York, we were gonna build a brand new facility. We were looking at the land and now we had a model built. We raised, make a long story short, we raised 400,000 in cash initially. Our young pastor decided that God spoke to him and he was gonna take that 400,000 and build a coffee shop in front of the church. Well, First Corinthians broke out in the church. People wanted their money back.
Oh,
And they told the pastor and told the elders, we will sue this church in court to get that money back. That money was given specifically for that. And the people were right.
Yeah,
The pastor was wrong. Of course, he was 23 years old. He read something in Charisma about coffee shops, but it split the church.
yeah,
And that's why all the elders, we left the church. I mean, because it was just, people wanted their money back. He had to return most of that $400,000.
now,
So
no,
be careful.
Yeah, you get into labor. Some of it is greed, but some of it is legitimate. The employer is not paying.
sure,
So it gets awfully complicated.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of the things that Biden was trying to do. I don't know how many of you know this, but he was going to try to tax unrealized gains.
I
You
know
know what that is?
Oh, yeah.
it's bad.
If you own stock or a house, you know what it is.
If your house is appreciated, he wants to tax you on the appreciation
Before you
sell
realize it.
before you take the money out of it. And then tax you when you take the money out of it.
And next year, if your house devalues, they don't cut back on the tax rate.
Right. So, that's something that people needed to complain about. Needed to complain about but fortunately, we have a different woman in there now.
Well, our constitution calls that redress, not complaints.
That's right.
Yeah,
It may be the horse is a different color, but it's.
people will complain.
You have to make sure your facts are straight and you're complaining and your facts are correct too, because the preschool that I worked at before First Baptist weekday preschool, I was there for about 11, 12 years or more, 13 years. And directed for 11. And when I left, I had some people, a couple of them go to this church, they came up to me and said, we have to apologize to you because we thought the things that we were complaining about behind your back were because of you, but when you left, we realized they weren't you. And they were mature enough to come back to me and apologize for that. But that you have to make sure you know what you're talking about, because you might not have the full picture.
Yeah.
Now, Dennis, you're supposed to rejoice that won't go back together.
Rejoicing always against everything.
Complain about it.
I'm not.
It's all right to complain against
I'm
it.
trying to find a solution.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
That's funny.
It's okay to throw it against the wall.
Yeah, throw it over there.
I think I can do this.
Yeah.
There we go. So if we look at verse, this would be 15, not 5. That you may become a blameless and harmless children of God without fault in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation, among whom you shine as lights in the world, holding fast the word of life, so that I may rejoice in the day of Christ, that I have not run in vain or labored in vain. What's Paul's unique description of Christians in verse 15 as a goal?
Please be a peacemaker.
Well, I think what Margie said before, when we don't operate as a church, we do harm to the gospel because the world looks at it, and I think that's one of the.
Is that fishing for that expression, shine as lights in the world? Is that what that question's getting
Well, it's focusing on 15, yes, and I think The reason the reason we should not complain and grumble is so that we may become blameless and harmless children of God. How much harm comes from grumbling and complaining? Okay, so he's instructing us here, you may become blameless and harmless in regard to that, as children of God without fault in the midst of a crooked and perverse generation. So this crooked and perverse generation, what's it doing? What's the biggest thing that happens in the world? If you look at Facebook, if you look at Nextdoor, any of these, what is the main thing that's going on?
Everybody
It's
has,
all about me.
And it's complaining.
everybody has an
It's
opinion.
complaining. You know, I'm contemplating right now putting a complaint on Facebook. Because the place that we rented to with Vibro was not what it was as advertised. And if I don't get some satisfaction and a refund because Megan and Mark could not stay there, it was just, you know, it felt unsafe. The neighborhood was not one of the best in the Pittsburgh area, and there was stuff in there. There was watermarks on the ceiling and different things like that. And you had to go down between houses into the backyard to get into the house. And nothing like that was said until you got directions the day that you're checking in. Let's just go through this, you know, and so you have to go into this backyard in the neighborhood that you're not sure is totally safe, you know. So I'm thinking about putting a complaint on Facebook because I've already complained to everybody I can. They said they're working on it. And I'm looking for a full refund. And so I'm looking to use Facebook as a way to kind of leverage that. And I'm gonna try to be very calm about it and not be.
Did they stay in the unit?
No,
Okay, so yeah, you didn't like, oh, the refund, if they'd stay in it.
they didn't stay. So anyway, but the world will do things because it's what? It's crooked and perverse. It's a perverse generation. And we know that. We know that as I was talking about that movie earlier, Girl on the Train, is that what it was? I mean, it was like, I think the only word that was that the author knew was the F-bomb. You know, I mean, it was just, you know, it was a mystery kind of thing, but it just was, you know. So that's what the world's saying to us. We wonder why the language is getting so bad across the board. It's because what has happened in the arts. And if you study literature and put it together with history, you will find that literature is one of the leading ways, the arts are leading ways that the culture changes.
It's Francis Schaeffer.
Yes, yes, yes. That's one of the ways the culture changes is through the arts.
It's interesting too, if you look, Paul had previously dealt with Corinth. Their complaining, grumbling, and it affected their worship.
Yes,
So it infects everything in the church.
yes. So what changes need to take place in order for Paul's description to be true of us? Well, what do we need to become? Blameless. For Paul's description, is Paul's description true of us? I admit it. It's true of me.
Yeah, I mean, yeah,
To
Yeah.
a degree.
we're a work in progress. So
Yes.
yes, progressive sanctification.
Yes.
And we're all at different points along the curve.
So what we have to do is we deal with these things, we have to start using them to change our attitudes, to change the way we do things. And if we get into a situation with somebody, we need to reconcile it.
Matthew 16.
And in what ways do we hold out the word of life? In what ways do we hold out the word of life? You know, we just went through the evangelism class. How do we do that in our daily lives? In what ways do we fail to do that?
a big topic.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, there are times that
We can give out a cross and share the word, but if we don't live the word. I mean, that was the problem between Paul and Peter. Peter
Yeah.
was not living the gospel that
yeah,
he preached. So we damage it.
And we need good leadership. Yeah,
yeah. So,
that we feel comfortable supporting.
yeah,
But we are all in our Christian, in the path of life that God has set before us. We are all works in project.
right,
Progress, because we will never get that perfect thing which we're striving for. We step back to, and when we get, the Lord calls us home.
yes.
And it's done.
Yeah. So, and what is the result of living without grumbling and complaining?
Peace.
Well, peace,
Yeah.
peace and gratitude. Margie, you're right about what you're saying about gratitude. It's very important. And we need to live our lives in gratitude to God for whatever, for the cold weather. Marilyn said, when somebody said something about the cold weather, she said, yeah, it's gonna kill all the bugs.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, and snakes.
It's
Keeps the
gonna
snakes
kill all the
away.
bugs and the viruses. You know, the cold does good.
Joan doesn't complain about cold weather. She just turns the thermostat up.
It's so hot in there.
What does it mean to be blameless and innocent? Well, I'm gonna tell you, we're not gonna sit here and try to figure it out. We're a light in a depraved world. We're submissive to God. We're blameless in people's eyes and God's. Pure, being refined as precious metal is. So we're being refined. So you know, we need to be that light that is mentioned in the passage. But we need to be submissive to God. And, you know, if we complain about something God has done, and, you know, let's keep it simple. If we complain about the weather, we're not being submissive to God.
I wish that was all I complained about.
Yeah, we're keeping it simple.
There's, in Gone with the Wind, there's a stark difference between Scarlett and Melanie. Melanie is always making peace, always helpful,
Mhm.
and Scarlett is always undergirding. She wants Ashley for herself.
Yeah.
And Melanie had, I mean, it,
Melanie was, and she even knew if Scarlett was after her husband,
yes.
and she still loves Scarlett.
When you look at pure being refined as precious metal is, the most precious metal is it pure? 100%.
Mhm.
And you see, that's like the Christian,
Yeah.
in a sense. We are pure and we have Christ righteous, but we're never gonna be refined and we're never gonna be precious until we go.
One hymn talks about the DOS,
Oh, yeah.
Dross.
the dross.
Yeah.
Yeah, dross, yeah.
Now, has Paul lost his modesty here as he writes that in the day of Christ I will have reason to glory because I did not run in vain nor toil in vain?
No, I think he's stating a fact.
Well, you'll find out. Well, he says, the day of Christ, so I will have reason to glory, because all he did, all his life is, I'm a slave to Christ.
Yeah,
But he's never, but he gets it
but
wrong.
he's asking the question, you know, the question here is he losing his modesty when he said, I did not run in vain nor
No.
toil in vain?
That's the heart of every pastor.
Yeah.
To bring a pastor should be joy, is to see the people are making progress and your preaching and teaching is getting through.
Yep.
That's the.
What does he mean by being a drink offering? What's a drink offering?
It's poured out.
Poured out. Yeah, poured out.
And he was poured out in prison and he was flogged
Yeah,
and.
Yeah. lots of different things there.
Was this, Stephen, was this under his house arrest in Rome? Or was it under Nero? You know?
This was probably in Rome.
I know,
He's right.
what period? Was this his first where he was
Thank you.
waiting for Caesar, or did he get caught up in that Nero? Because he says, I'm being poured out like a drink offering.
Second.
You think so? I read Second Timothy here.
Yeah, right, and the references and
I was
everything
wondering
is to
that.
Second Timothy. Is to
So
Second.
this is a later letter, right?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It only be a difference of a few years.
How does giving one's life away bring joy?
It can only
You need to
be,
worry about it, you get everything.
That's true.
it can only be a believer. An unbeliever can't understand it.
That's one, I think of that when I was a little boy in grade school, the nuns made me read A Tale of Two Cities. And I always remember that famous line at the end, where the fella, the guy, I forgot his name, he loved the girl so much, which her fiance, the one she loved, was in prison,
Yeah.
and he swapped places with that, and he's standing before the guillotine. And he says, it's a far, far better thing than I've ever done, a far better rest that I go to. He was willing to go to the guillotine in place of that fellow's. He loved her enough so that she could have, what a great theme that was in our literature about. I wish they could have seen it. He was joyful.
Yeah, so if you give your life away, and you know, there's big ways to give your life away. You know, like, if you are confronted by somebody that is going to shoot your wife, and you jump in the way and you literally give your life away. Okay, that is bringing joy in a sense, because that's what a husband is, to protect the family. Okay, and the joy, you know, there'd be joy, you know, even though it would be bad, there'd be joy of the people that surround the wife. They'd be joyful that she survived.
Right.
Okay, so there would be joy that way. But then there's little things. There's little things. How do we bring joy in little ways, giving ourselves away?
When it says, you know, to give your life away, there's two dimensions to that. One is what you're saying, would I die for Joan? Of course I would. But if I'm married to her, I have given away some of my freedom. Okay, because my
Just
goal as a
some?
husband should make me want her to be the best she can
Yes.
be. And that may mean sacrifices on my part and giving up what I want. So that's another level. of
Yes, and
dying for a person.
and you don't complain about that.
No,
Because you want that, you want to do that, so you glory in that.
right.
You glory in your relationships. Bob's got a little smile on
it's
his
coming.
face.
I was thinking about, this happened, you know what the Gateway Clipper is. No?
Yeah,
Okay, we were on the Gateway Clipper, we were first married
riverboat in Pittsburgh.
at Pittsburgh.
Ah.
And we're going down the river. And she's standing beside me, and these kids up there start throwing rocks. I mean, they were boulders. I grabbed her and put her around like this. And she's hollering and screaming at me. Here I'm putting my life. I always kick her. But yeah, they were throwing rocks off the
Oh,
bridge.
that was when they were still using the oars on that.
Yeah. But I mean, I thought, oh boy, she's hollering at me, screaming at me. Then
He says I go through life with a bag over my head, which I have realized that I do. And I didn't know what he was doing. I didn't see people so slow.
I tell you, the biggest thing of dying for another person is letting go of that remote and watching Hallmark. Okay, and I'm sitting there, right?
Or you have a TV in the other room.
Yeah, but I don't go there though, because I don't run away. I just stay there. If she wants to do Hallmark, I'll do Hallmark.
Here's why it's so important to give your life away. Is what you give your life away is watching the recipient of who you're giving a piece of your life to. So you're giving a piece of your life to someone, let's say, well, watching them receive that gift, whatever it is you're doing for them, brings them great joy, which brings you incredible joy. And it may be something that, and listen, that doesn't happen overnight. This is a process we're all going through. But I watch children, and so like I'm watching kids and I'm giving them something of myself. And I'm watching their faces and how it brings them great joy. You know, whatever
Yes,
that may be.
yeah.
And if it doesn't, then I know that I've missed the mark somehow, because kids are pretty honest with you, like, hey, you know, and they'll tell you.
Yeah,
But when you give your life away, what you're doing is that piece of you is gone, but you're watching the recipient. That's receiving whatever it is that you're doing. That's the joy. That's what brings joy to your life. Watching them.
What are the two greatest joys in life?
Salvation.
Yeah, I would say that
Yes.
you, that's the first one. Being married, I love being married. I'm with Nancy Reagan. She said her life didn't begin until she married money. And I'd be a spinster if he wouldn't. Pick up. I mean,
Joy of a child, or birth of a child, I think is great joy.
also.
That's almost subjective, really, right? Yeah, are there two? Do we have two?
Yes, sir.
The right answer?
Yeah, we'll get to the right answer.
Okay.
It's also good
We're shooting in the dark here, you know?
to see your children grow up.
I think life is one of the greatest joys in the world.
Well, children.
Life itself.
Oh,
No,
no.
just life, just the fact of living.
You were right when you said, the greatest joy is to know Jesus Christ,
Oh.
salvation. What would be a second joy? We mentioned a number of them.
But you have hope too. You know your end. There's a joy in living your life knowing that there's
Serving.
sense in the world.
And seeing your children accept Christ.
There,
Yeah, you go.
there we
Yes,
go.
yes.
It is knowing that others are coming to
Yeah.
Christ.
Yes.
That they're, I got this habit from watching my dad. My dad looked at the obituaries every day. Dad was a treasurer of a plant credit union, so he had to stay on top of people who were dying because there was insurance involved and he had to make sure that got done, but he had to go to the funeral homes. So I look at I look at them, and sometimes when I look at them, and I don't read them all, but I glance through them, and sometimes when I read them and I find that somebody was local to where I grew up, and I thought, well, maybe there was somebody I knew that knew them, one of their relatives, and I look through. And I see they were members of St. Regis Church. And my thought is, did they know Christ? Did they come to know Christ? And my thought at that point is, they probably didn't hear the gospel there. So hopefully they heard the gospel from somewhere else and responded to it and just never left that church. And I believe there are believers in the Roman church. I believe that because the gospel's out there among their friends, more so now today. Because you were saying we didn't have anything to do with Roman Catholic. Well, in our town, if we didn't have anything to do with Roman Catholics, we would have been monks ourselves. But to know that people have come to know Christ and they've died in Christ is a good thing, so I look at those things. All right, here's some questions. Against whom is grumbling and complaining ultimately directed?
God himself.
Yes. Which image does Paul use to describe the Philippians in Philippians 2:17?
Drink off.
Wait a minute, I think
Drink off. Pour it out. Yeah.
There's a drink offering.
he talked about himself being the drink offering.
What is a drink offering? That's what I said.
He said he was being poured out as a drink offering. He didn't say.
I'm sorry, actually, no, the image that Paul uses is living sacrifice. Living sacrifice. What does the imagery of the two offerings in Philippians 2:17 highlight about Paul's attitude toward the Philippians? Now, what were the two offerings he was talking about?
Drink offering.
Drink offering
Offering
and a
and
burnt, he was talking about a burnt offering.
There for their unity.
It's a fond regard for their intimate friendship. He was intimately a intimate friend to the Philippians. Bob, you were gonna point to another one.
No, I mean, that was one.
Oh, okay. For Paul, what is the most noteworthy result of pouring out one's life for another?
Maybe joy.
Joy.
He's on the same page as Conwell.
What does Paul request of the Philippian believers in Philippians 2:18?
It's either A or B, make my joy
Well,
complete.
Okay,
Probably it's A.
18,
Share your joy. D.
18, because 18 is the one that he
Share your
says,
joy.
don't grumble.
D.
Okay, I mean, I'm sorry. This one's later on, so it's,
I thought it was B, no?
No, it's D.
no, share your joy with me. He's talking about,
Okay,
so he's talking about sharing joy.
okay.
And so one of the things that we should be doing too is sharing joy with one another. We should be sharing that,
Okay.
the joy that we have. So next week, we're gonna pick up and, looks like it's long. It's not as long, it's not as, in depth, because we're gonna be talking about Timothy. Epaphroditus. Sounds like a disease.
It means son of Aphrodite.
Yes.
That's an interesting name.
So we'll be looking at that next week, and I really like to see, we see a lot of practicality in these two folks. Just for your information, I'm using a couple commentaries. One's by Jim Boyce, who was the pastor. And by the way, that church is having issues too, because their pastor was found to be messing around, I guess you could call it. And I've heard that it is closing. You know, here was a church that was having conferences there of hundreds of people, and it's, of course, it's in an area, and at the time, there were a lot of churches that were losing people to churches like 10th Press because of the biblical teaching. It was the same thing that was happening in our church in Pitcairn. It was biblically teaching, and we had 300 members at one time, and now it's down to just a handful. I mean, it's doing okay, but it looks like it's not going to close, but it's struggling. It's a community that's a result of the Rust Belt. And, so anyway, let us be joyful. Okay, we're moving down through these, and these things, and of course this was Lawson's outline, and some of this stuff is coming from Lawson. As Paul told us earlier, even if people are doing things for their own gain, but the message is clear, it's a good message. So I won't subject you to Lawson. We won't look at his video, but we'll
His teaching was right on the mark.
Yeah.
He just didn't live up to it.
yeah. But I was listening this week to the video, and he definitely was hypocritical. There's no question about it. As I listened to the video, some of the things he was saying in there were just unsettling, to say the least. Anyway, so that's where we are. And so let us pray. Our gracious Heavenly Father, we thank you for this day. We thank you for the blessings that you have given to us. And we ask, Lord, that you would allow us to become blameless that you will help us not to be grumbling and complainers. Help us to be that light in the world that needs the light so desperately. And we pray, Lord, that we might just be cheerful in all things,